What's up, squad? Y'all ready for story time? We're gonna start this off a little differently because we're gonna cover the story that got me interested in this whole isochain venture, and it starts with a frog. So here's how this all began, because in the early 20th century, we had World War I. So from 1914 to 1918, a lot of our technology collided with old tactics, and the results were pretty crazy. So by the time everything was all said and done, 17 million people were dead and over 20 mil were wounded. So all this new weaponry meant that there were a lot more injured soldiers than at any other time in history at that point. And many of these injuries were so bad, they required a lot of months of rest and recovery. So on one hand, we have our politicians and generals trying to figure out how to handle all this. And on the other hand, we have the medical professionals with a different problem: how to deal with all these wounded people, because there's a lot of them. The longer the injured soldiers remain in bed, usually immobilized partly or entirely due to the injury, the more their muscles begin to atrophy, aka wither away. So due to the nature of these injuries, a lot of the wounded needed a long time to rest and heal. Unfortunately though, over all this time, their conditioning tanked. Their strength took a dive, and even their bone density took a L too. They atrophied so bad, they had the strength of old ladies. To sum it up, they pretty much became useless as soldiers. That's not good. So being the problem solvers that we are in this wonderful human race, a lot of medical institutions were receiving government funding. One of these institutions was the Springfield College in Massachusetts. They analyzed rates of atrophy in immobilized soldiers and embarked upon a study using the amphibious population. Not scuba divers, mind you, frogs. Yeah. This experiment turned out to be really eye-opening for reasons different than what everyone thought. In this experiment, a lot of researchers took X amount of frogs and securely bound just one of each of their legs to a small strut, pretty much making a splint and preventing the frog from moving around in the bound leg. They put the frogs back in the tank and allowed them to limp around and try and move around as normally as possible. Not really ethical, but this was the experiment. Based off of all that we talked about so far, 2 weeks later, the researchers came back expecting to see them all atrophied because they can't move, they're immobilized, you know, just like the soldiers. Yeah, no, that is not what happened at all. The unbound limb was perfectly normal because they were used for daily movement by said frog. The bound leg, the leg that was in a splint, no, totally the opposite. That leg was huge, man. It was jacked. It became far larger than the unbound limb, almost to the point of appearing muscular. So the scientists were like, why? Like, why did that happen? By the way, not only were the legs in the splint larger, they were stronger too. When the frogs were put down, they were immediately able to jump huge distances, but in a diagonal direction. The leg that was in the splint was so much stronger than the leg that wasn't. The frogs had to relearn how to jump in a straight line. Like, what? That's crazy. Before too long, everybody started to realize what actually happened. The frogs, for the entire 2 weeks, had been pushing their legs against a splint in a fruitless attempt to move them. Obviously they didn't, the splint stayed. But as a result, through isometric training, the immobile leg had gained an insane amount of strength and muscle. When they realized the error that they made using the animal population, the Springfield guys chalked the experiment up to experience and moved on to other methods. Those guys at Springfield, they thought that they had failed. In their trial, I guess, yes, they did. But they indirectly stumbled upon one of the essential truths of exercise science. They discovered the insane power of isometric exercise. How's that for getting your attention? It is right here. It is literally the first paragraph in Paul Wade's Isometric Manual. If you don't have that book and you like isometric exercise, there is a link down below in the description. I highly recommend buying it. You will be enamored for 400 something pages of just isometric exercise science, gold nuggets left and right. It is so fun. I love that, but I still love this. I still read this. I got this book almost a year ago. I can't stop reading. I've read this so many times already. It totally got my attention and got me to read the rest of the book. And the first like 50, 60 pages is nothing but case studies and fitness nerdy principles and stuff like. I love that stuff, guys. I love it. And you know, I was hooked. I was like, dude, I want this isochain thing. And so here we are a year later and totally happy with my purchase. I'm out here dying in this 90-degree weather out here in central Pennsylvania, getting my Springfield frog exercise on. I'm not actually doing that program, but there is a program on that. Here is a link right here. I have to do this because I'm holding it with my left hand. Check it out. One of the pieces of information I would have loved to know from that story is how many times the frogs were trying to get out of that splint. Now, I understand, you know, for the sake of the book and storytelling and the study itself from back then, they're not going to go into and just like have somebody around like the whole time around the clock looking to see when they activate their muscle fibers. But I'm sure it was many, 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 many times. I bring that up because of muscular hypertrophy. Isometric hypertrophy, time under tension. How long were those frogs' muscles under tension when they were trying to get out of there? Were they just trying to like for like 2 seconds and they gave up, and then for 2 seconds and then they gave up? Or were they contracting for like maybe 15 seconds before they gave out? Or you know what I mean? Because 20 to 45 seconds, 60 to 85% muscular contraction, all that type of, you know, all the nerdy numbers and stuff. I would have liked to know that. Now, of course, it's not going to be a complete translation from amphibian to Homo sapien, but would have still liked to know. Squad, thanks for watching. And if you like the video, be sure to drop a like, go ahead and comment. And if you'd like to see more of these case studies from Paul Wade's Isometric Manual, drop a comment in the comment section below. I'll tell the story. I highly encourage you to support him in Dragon Door and purchase the book just so you can have it for yourself. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.